Everyone knows how to start. Starting is easy. Starting is exciting. Starting is full of energy. That first day in the gym. That first page of the book. That first meeting where ideas feel unstoppable. Anyone can start. But here is the truth: starting doesn't change your life. Finishing does. Most people worship beginnings. They love the rush of a new plan, the thrill of a new habit, the energy of a new project. They post about it. They talk about it. They celebrate it. But what happens after the rush fades? What happens when the excitement dies? What happens when it gets hard, when it gets boring, when it gets heavy? Most people quit. And so their life becomes a graveyard of unfinished beginnings. That person, the one you must become, knows better. They know that beginnings are cheap. They know that anyone can start. They know that finishing is what counts. Because the world doesn't reward those who start. The world rewards those who finish. Here is the refrain that will carry you through this journey: finish, not start better. Repeat it. Let it settle into your bones. Finish, not start better. Because the world is full of starters. But it is empty of finishers. Everyone wants the glory of the first day. Few want the grind of the last mile. But the last mile is where transformation happens. The last mile is where identity is forged. The last mile is where victory lives. Most people will spend their lives running in circles of beginning. New goals every January. New plans every Monday. New promises every time they feel inspired. And every time, they quit before the finish. That is why their life never changes. That person is different. That person doesn't measure by how many things they start. They measure by what they finish. They don't chase the feeling of excitement. They chase the discipline of completion. Think about it. History doesn't remember those who almost finished. History remembers those who crossed the line. No one asks how many times you started. They ask, did you finish? Starting is emotion. Finishing is identity. Starting is easy. Finishing is rare. Most people chase motivation. They wait until they feel good to act. But motivation is for starting. Discipline is for finishing. And discipline is what builds legacies. So ask yourself now, do you want to be a starter or a finisher? Do you want to be another person with a drawer full of abandoned dreams? Or do you want to be the person who can point to their life and say, I finished. I saw it through. I didn't quit. This is not about speed. It is not about perfection. It is about persistence. Because anyone can start strong. Few can finish strong. And strength is proven at the end, not the beginning. Say it again, louder this time: finish, not start better. Beginnings are deceiving. They feel powerful. They feel like transformation. But beginnings are only a spark. If you don't guard the fire, if you don't keep feeding it, that spark fades into smoke. And most people live in that smoke. They confuse sparks with flames. They confuse starting with succeeding. That is why the gyms are full in January and empty in March. That is why journals are filled with first pages and blank the rest of the year. That is why millions of people chase idea after idea, business after business, goal after goal, without ever completing what they began. They are intoxicated by beginnings. But beginnings don't build legacies. Finishing does. Say it again, finish, not start better. Look at your own life. How many times have you felt the rush of starting something new? How many times did you believe this time would be different, only to quit halfway? How many unfinished books, unfinished workouts, unfinished promises lie behind you? That is the weight of being a starter without becoming a finisher. But here is the good news: finishing is not a gift. Finishing is not reserved for the talented, the lucky, the chosen. Finishing is a choice. Finishing is a discipline. Finishing is built in daily decisions and small acts of persistence, and the refusal to quit when quitting feels easier. Most people run hard at the beginning. They sprint out of the gate. But marathons are not won in the first mile. They are won in the last. That person knows this. That person conserves, endures, pushes when everyone else collapses. That person knows that beginnings are for everyone, but finishes are for the few. Finishing requires a different mindset. It requires patience when excitement fades. It requires grit when energy dies. It requires focus when distractions multiply. It requires faith when results are not yet visible. And above all, it requires commitment to see it through no matter what. Think of the builders of great cathedrals. Some projects took decades, even centuries. The ones who laid the first stone never saw the final spire. But they kept building. They believed in finishing, even if they would not see it themselves. And because of that, those cathedrals still stand today. Not because someone started, but because generation after generation chose to finish. Finishing is not glamorous. It is not Instagram worthy. It is not loud. It is silent persistence. It is the extra hour when you are exhausted. It is the last rep when your muscles are burning. It is the final paragraph when your mind wants to quit. It is the last push when nobody else is watching. Most people will never know this feeling. They will know excitement. They will know beginnings. They will know quitting. But they will not know finishing. But you can be different. You can rewrite your story. You can become a finisher. So as we step deeper into this message, carry the refrain with you. Whisper it when you feel tired. Shout it when you feel tempted to quit. Let it echo in your chest. Finish, not start better. Because finishing is not just about the task. It is about identity. It is about becoming the kind of person who sees things through. It is about proving to yourself that you can endure, persist, and rise when others fall away. And once you become that person, nothing can stop you. Most people love the rush of the beginning. They buy the new shoes, they write the new plan, they tell the world about their new journey. They sprint in excitement. But then comes the valley. The middle. The stretch where nobody is watching, where results are invisible, where boredom creeps in and obstacles multiply. And this is where most people quit. But that person, the one you can become, knows that the valley is where victory is forged. The finish is not won in the first burst of excitement. The finish is earned in the grind of the middle. Think of a writer. Many people dream of writing a book. They type a few chapters, they talk about being an author, but then fear and fatigue arrive. Most stop. The drawer fills with half-finished manuscripts. But the true author presses on. One paragraph a day. One revision at a time. They keep going until the last page is written. The world never reads the drafts that quit. The world only reads the book that finished. Mini story 1. A young man dreamed of running a marathon. On the first day of training, he felt unstoppable. On the second week, he felt tired. By the third month, he wanted to quit. Most people would have. But he remembered the refrain, finish, not start better. So he kept running, 1 mile at a time. On race day, his body ached, his lungs screamed, but he crossed the line. And in that moment, he realized the truth, the finish, not the start, was what made him a runner. Mini story 2, a student wanted to master the violin. She practiced passionately for a month, then hit the wall. It was boring. It was hard. Her friends mocked her. Most would have quit. But she chose differently. She practiced through the dull scales, through the endless repetitions. Years later, she stood on stage, playing music that moved hearts. Not because she started, but because she finished. Mini story 3, an entrepreneur launched a business. The first weeks were exciting, new customers, new ideas, new momentum. Then the struggles came, bills, setbacks, criticism. Most would have folded. But he chose persistence. He reminded himself daily, finish, not start better. Years later, that company thrived, not because it was the best idea at the start, but because he had the grit to see it through to the end. This is the difference between most people and that person. Most people are addicted to beginnings. That person is committed to finishing. Discipline versus feelings, this is where finishing is forged. Feelings love to start. Feelings love excitement. But discipline loves the finish. Discipline carries you when feelings die. That person doesn't ask, do I feel like it? They ask, did I finish what I said I would? Responsibility builds the same way. Most people blame circumstances when they don't finish. It was too hard. I was too busy. Life got in the way. But responsibility says, I chose not to finish. And when you take responsibility, you also take power. Because if finishing is your choice, you can choose it again and again. Consistency is the backbone. Most people dabble. They try for a week. They stop for a month. They restart when inspiration returns. But inspiration is for starting. Consistency is for finishing. That person chooses steady progress, even when it's small, even when it's unseen. And vision, long-term vision, is what makes finishing possible. Most people live in the short term. They love the dopamine of starting, the applause of announcing. But that person looks beyond. They see the end. They imagine the finish line. And that vision pulls them forward when motivation fades. Say it again, finish, not start better. Mini story 4, a woman wanted to change her health. She signed up for a program, bought the gear, filled her fridge with new food. The first week was exciting. The second was hard. By the third, she wanted to quit. Most people would have. But she remembered the truth, starting won't change me, finishing will. So she kept showing up. She kept tracking. She kept pushing. Months later, she looked in the mirror and didn't just see a smaller body, she saw a stronger identity. Mini story 5, a young man wanted to learn coding. He downloaded tutorials, started strong, but when the lessons got complicated, he froze. Most people stop here. But he didn't. He told himself, finish, not start better. Every night, 1 hour, no matter how confusing. A year later, he had built an app. Not because he started, but because he finished. Mini Story 6, a community wanted change. They held rallies, started conversations, lit the fire of hope. But real transformation wasn't in the first march. It was in the years of persistence. The meetings, the votes, the laws passed. The real change came because people didn't just start, they finished. Finishing requires courage. Fear will always show up halfway. Fear will whisper, "You're behind. You're failing. Quit now and save yourself the pain." Most people listen. That person doesn't. That person keeps walking with fear as a companion, knowing fear screams loudest right before the breakthrough. Finishing requires responsibility. Most people say, "It's not my fault I didn't finish." But that person owns the finish line. They don't blame distractions. They don't excuse failure. They decide, "If I said I would finish, I will." Finishing requires consistency. Most people sprint, stop, restart, stop again. Their lives are broken pieces of enthusiasm. That person chooses rhythm. They choose steady steps. They choose daily persistence until the work is complete. Finishing requires vision. Most people forget why they started. They lose sight of the goal. But that person keeps the end in mind. They imagine the reward. They picture the victory. And that picture pulls them forward, mile after mile. Finishing requires serving others. Most people quit because they focus only on themselves. They ask, "What do I feel? What do I want?" But when you finish for others, your family, your team, your community, you find fuel that never runs out. That person knows finishing is not just personal. It is a gift. This is why finishing builds identity. Because every time you finish, you tell yourself, "I can be trusted. I keep my word. I don't quit." And identity, once forged, is unbreakable. Most people will never know this. They will keep living in the glow of beginnings, never tasting the fire of finishing. They will tell themselves, "At least I tried." But trying is not finishing. Trying is not transformation. That person, you, will choose differently. You will measure your life not by how many things you start, but by how many you finish. And once you finish, once you prove it to yourself, you will see the pattern everywhere. Because finishing is contagious. One finished project becomes fuel for the next. One completed promise builds momentum for another. And soon, your life becomes a chain of completions, a fortress of trust, a testimony of persistence. Say it with me again, finish, not start better. Finishing is rare. That's why it's powerful. That's why it changes lives. That's why it separates ordinary from extraordinary. Because anyone can start, but few have the courage, the grit, the endurance to finish. Most people will live their whole lives in beginnings. They'll start diets, but never finish them. They'll start books, but never finish them. They'll start dreams, but never finish them. And because of that, they never transform. Their lives are littered with fragments, with half-built bridges, with broken promises to themselves. But you can be different. You can choose to be a finisher. You can choose to be the one who sees it through, who doesn't quit when the feelings fade, who doesn't abandon the mission when it gets hard. Say it again, finish, not start better. Let it echo inside you. Let it become your standard. Let it become your identity. Because finishing is not about talent. It is not about luck. It is not about where you came from. Finishing is about commitment. It's about persistence. It's about refusing to give up when most people do. Think of the champions. They didn't win because they started. They won because they finished. The medal is not handed at the starting line. It is handed at the finish line. The applause is not for showing up. It is for enduring until the end. Most people crave the applause of the start. They want the likes, the comments, the cheer when they announce their new plan. But that fades quickly. Real respect, real honor, real achievement, it comes when you finish. Finishing builds self-respect. Every time you finish, you tell yourself, I can be trusted. I don't quit. I keep my word. And that trust in yourself is priceless. Because if you can trust yourself to finish, you can build anything. Most people don't finish because they think small steps don't matter. But finishing is built on small steps. On micro victories. On showing up daily. That person knows this. That person doesn't need it to be glamorous. They just need it to be done. Look around you. How many people started projects they never finished? How many dreams are abandoned halfway? How many promises are broken before the end? That is the tragedy of starters. But you can break the cycle. You can be the one who finishes. And when you do, your life will transform. Because finishing one thing proves you can finish the next. And the next. Until finishing is who you are. This is your moment of decision. Will you be another starter, forgotten in the crowd of quitters? Or will you be a finisher, remembered for what you saw through? Say it once more, finish, not start better. Because finishing is freedom. Finishing is power. Finishing is transformation. Finishing is not just about goals. It is about character. It is about becoming someone the world can rely on, someone your family can depend on, someone your future self can trust. Because if you finish what you start, you build more than results, you build identity. Most people break promises to themselves. They say they'll change, but they quit. They say they'll persist, but they give up. Every broken promise erodes their confidence. Every unfinished plan makes them smaller. But every finish makes you stronger. Every finish tells your soul, I can trust myself. That person, the one you are called to be, chooses finishing as their standard. They don't quit when fear rises. They don't quit when feelings fade. They don't quit when obstacles multiply. They keep moving until the job is done. Say it again, finish, not start better. Because finishing is what closes the gap between intention and transformation. It's what separates wishful thinking from reality. It's what turns dreams into results. Think of the legacy you want. Nobody remembers those who almost finished. Nobody celebrates those who nearly completed their mission. History honors those who endure to the end. And you can join them, not by starting better, but by finishing stronger. The urgency is real. Every day you delay finishing, you train yourself to quit. Every day you stop halfway, you reinforce weakness. But every time you finish, you reinforce strength. And strength, repeated daily, becomes unstoppable. Most people will keep living in cycles of excitement and quitting. They will live their lives surrounded by half-built bridges. They will reach the end and wonder why nothing changed. Don't let that be your story. Your story can be different. Your story can be one of persistence. Your story can be one of completion. Your story can be one of finishing. So when you feel tired, finish. When you feel bored, finish. When you feel scared, finish. When you feel tempted to quit, finish. Because finishing is not about how you feel. It is about who you are. And when you finish, when you cross that line, when you keep your promise, you will know the truth. The power was never in the start. The power was always in the finish. Say it one final time, louder than before. Let it burn into your identity. Finish, not start better. Be that person today. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Not when life gets easier. Today. Because today is all you have. Finish what you began. Finish who you are becoming. Finish the race set before you. And when you finish, you will rise.